Welcome to Fix It Home Improvement, covering projects that every homeowner should know and great products for home and garden.
Hi, I'm JC, and this is where we share weekly home improvement tips. I'm here with my co-host, Cindy.
Hello, JC.
Hi, Cindy. Today we're going to be talking about some fall cleanup ideas and fall fertilizer. I want to thank Park Ridge DDS. They gave us a 5-star rating and review on iTunes.
Well, that was very nice of them.
It was.
Okay, so why don't we start with the lawn?
Okay, so like last episode, cleaning up the leaves off your yard is very important, whether you're raking them, using a blower, or mulching it with your mower. You want to get these leaves up so you don't do damage to your lawn.
What happens?
Depending on where you are, if you're in the north where you have a freeze, if you have snow covered on top of these leaves, you know, it can lead to damage to your lawn. It'll create bare spots. In the south, it can encourage lawn disease. So you want to get the leaves up. And then, depending on your soil, if you have an area where you have compacted clay soil, a great thing to do in the fall, about once every 3 years or once every 5 years, is aerating. So creating those holes, so digging out, using a machine. They actually sell aerating shoes and a couple tools that you can use, but it's very cheap to just hire somebody to aerate your lawn. They use a big machine.
I talked about that before when I came home from school and my parents had that done.
And it scared you?
Yeah, it freaked me out because I'm like, what the heck is wrong with the lawn?
But it's good because it loosens up the soil, it adds organic material. So when you create these holes, then organic material falls into that, so it breaks up the clay, and then it also allows more nutrients to flow to the roots, especially for your grass. It allows more organic material in there for worms and the microorganisms in your lawn. So it's just healthy. So once every 3 to 5 years, if you cored or aerated your lawn, you're going to have a much thicker, healthier lawn. But one thing to remember, I know we had a couple customers over the years come in, and we had one person who said that they had a company come out and it destroyed their sprinkler system or in-ground sprinkler system. They forgot to tell them, hey, we have a sprinkler system. And then if you have like those electric fences, your cousins put up that electric fence for their dog. Yeah, so you got to make sure that you let the people know that you're doing that. And then another great thing that you can do in fall is reseeding your lawn. So depending on where you are in the country and the type of lawn you have, the type of grass, most grass after about 5 years, it slows down the amount of new grass that it develops. So you want to overseed, you want to add new grass seed to your lawn. And fall, if you're in a cool season area, so you get a frost and snow in the winter, you want to do this in the fall. Actually, it's a little healthier in warm weather areas where you don't get a frost to overseed in the spring. But if you're in a cool area in winter, fall is a wonderful time to add grass seed to your lawn.
Does it matter what kind of grass seed you're using?
Well, again, depending on where you are, like in cool season areas, you would be using like bluegrass, like here around the Chicago area. Bluegrass, the perennial fescues, and ryegrass are probably what's the biggest makeup.
Well, I know at the store we sell fall grass seed.
Right.
So are they just mixing that for each area?
So every company's going to have their own unique blend. And then in the warm weather area where you have warm grasses like Bermuda, zoysia, you're going to get a blend that's designed for. And that's what's great about buying products in your local hardware store.
Right.
They're going to have exactly what grows well. In fact, they like some of these co-ops, they only have what grows in that area in their warehouse, so that's all they can buy.
So do you have to alternate years that you're going to aerate your lawn and then overseed it?
No, it's actually a great time to throw down seed, because when you create those holes, you've broken through any thatch, so you're making sure now that these seeds are touching soil. And those cores that they pull out, it's little clumps of dirt, and they break down, and so it's touching soil. You need seeds to touch soil to germinate, and you need the right amount of water for the first couple of weeks. But yeah, great time to overseed.
So let's jump into fall fertilizer.
Okay. Fall is an important time to put down the correct fertilizer. The rest of the year, it really doesn't matter, for the most part, what you're throwing down. Most of it's high in nitrogen, so there's 3 numbers on a bag.
Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium.
Exactly. And the first number is your nitrogen, and that's what's greening up your lawn. It helps with the stem growth. And then the phosphorus and the potassium, what they do is they help with the root growth and then just overall resistance to disease and heat and cold. So in the fall, it's very important that you're looking at the packaging and you're getting something that either says fall fertilizer or winter fertilizer. Winterizer, because you're not getting as much nitrogen. You don't really want it to be greening up and growing. You want it to start thickening up its cell walls and protecting itself against cold weather. And then in warm weather grass, it's helping protect itself for disease. So again, very important that you're picking the right product. And
so at the beginning of the year, if you picked up a 4-step program, this is going to be the 4th step.
Exactly. I did some research. I read a really nice research paper from Purdue University, and they've been doing for decades this research on different types of fertilizer and when to fertilize, and for cold season grass. So if you're in an area where you get a hard freeze during the winter, it's very important that fall fertilizer, and their research showed that nothing beats a fall fertilizer. So if you're only going to fertilize one time of the year in cold season, so in the northern states in the U.S., you would want to make it a fall fertilizer, and it's going to be much healthier, and you're going to actually have a greener lawn next year if you apply a good quality fall fertilizer. And they did experiments, and in fact we did some training with Scots, and they had this kind of the same thing, that you can't beat a fall fertilizer. And then number 2 is a spring fertilizer. With their research, even if you fertilized a lot the rest of the year, if you missed that spring fertilizer, it doesn't do as well. So in cold season areas, number 1 fertilizer you should be hitting every year is your fall fertilizer. And then if you're going to fertilize twice, it would be fall and spring. Now in the warm regions, in the warm season grasses, they say that you really should be fertilizing 3 times a year. And for warm season grasses, you actually shouldn't put down a fertilizer after September.
Why?
It can help lead to lawn disease, which is very interesting for all this research they've been doing. So fall, great time to fertilize, but make sure that you're getting the right one. You want very low in nitrogen, you want high in phosphorus and potassium.
So you need to pay attention to the package when you're buying a fall fertilizer, because some are just straight fertilizer and others have a weed and feed in it.
Right.
So it's a weed controlled product. So you want to explain how to put that down?
So for the weed and feed, you got to make sure that you're getting it onto a wet lawn. So the steps would be, you'd want to mow your lawn first. That way the regular grass isn't covering the leaves of the weeds. Then you want to take a hose and saturate your lawn so that it's wet. Then you're going to put down your weed and feed, and you want that to stick to the leaves of the weeds, and that's what's going to kill them right down to the roots. And that's the one mistake a lot of homeowners make, is they just put it down and they don't put it on wet leaves. And then you want to make sure that there's no rain in the forecast for 24 to 48 hours, because you don't want it washed off.
So applying a regular fall fertilizer, how do you do that?
So just normally, it doesn't matter whether you put it on wet or dry. You know, you'd want to water it in. If you have kids or pets, you'd want to water it in and let it dry before you let them play in the yard. But the weed and feed is the only one that has to be put onto wet grass, and you want it to stay on that grass without being diluted for 24 to 48 hours. And then you can water it in. You want to get the fertilizer then down into the soil, because it's doing nothing for the grass until that fertilizer is actually washed into the soil.
And there's a pretty big price difference if you're getting a weed control fertilizer compared to just a straight fall fertilizer.
Right.
So let's move away from the lawn and talk about some planting ideas.
Okay, so for fall, it's a great time to plant fall bulbs.
Like what type?
So flowers that come up in the spring. So like tulips, crocuses. And you always want to dig a hole, and you want to put the bulb in there with the pointy end up. That's kind of the main tip. And then if you have larger bulbs, with bulbs that really fit in the palm of your hand, you're going to put those about 8 inches deep, and then the smaller ones are going to be about 5 inches deep. What's interesting is some of the new research, they say that you really don't need fertilizer the first year.
That's interesting.
That bulb has everything it needs for the first year, which, you know, goes against a lot of our vendors. You know, because they're saying, man, put that bone meal in there and fish meal and everything else. But a lot of the research says it probably isn't going to hurt. You wouldn't want to put too much in, because you actually can burn the roots. But no fertilizer is really necessary the first year. After the first year, then it's, you know, it's very healthy to fertilize it. Fall also, great time to plant shrubs and trees. A tip with that is, if you're buying a tree or a shrub and it comes in that ball, the roots are in a ball with soil around it, you want to take a real sharp razor knife and from the top to the bottom of that root ball, just cut all the way around so you're breaking free those roots. What can happen sometimes is when you put that root ball into a hole and then pack a different type of soil around it,
right.
Sometimes the roots don't want to go in that soil, which is really interesting.
Well, my cousin, he planted like 3 trees right by his house.
Okay.
2 of them took, 1 of them...
Really?
Yeah,
interesting.
all bought from the same place, so it just must have been that the roots probably were tighter on that one.
Yeah, interesting. So cut them. You want that hole to be about twice as big as the root ball. And then one of the tricks is never plant the top, that crown, that right where the roots start to move off from the top of that ball. You want that top of the ball to be even with the ground. You don't want to bury that. And then roses, it's time, like we talked about in our rose episode. In fact, that's a nice one to revisit, but it's a perfect time to be cutting back roses. You want to trim them down. Any bare branches, you want to cut all that down. And then depending on what part of the country, especially if you're in an area that freezes, you want to build up some leaves or soil around the stem, the base of the rose plant.
So still talking about trees that you just planted, is it a good time to fertilize?
Most landscapers I talk to said it's a great time to fertilize when you first plant them because they need that initial boost of nitrogen. And they actually recommend broadcasting. So you plant your tree or your shrub and then use a granular fertilizer and just broadcast it around the root zone. So from just off the base to the width of where the edges of the leaves extend or the branches extend. And that way you're watering it in and you're not going to burn the roots.
What about like the tree spikes that we sell?
We did real well with Miracle Grow. They have spikes and Jobs, Jobes. They have spikes, and you put those, you pound in these spikes. So again, that drip zone. So the width of the tree or the shrub at the outer edges, that's where you want to put these spikes. And then as these spikes dissolve in the soil, the roots are able to grab those nutrients.
So even for an established tree, is fall a good time to fertilize?
Fall's a great time to fertilize. Fall and early spring, or pick one. Either late fall or early spring is a great time. Something like this, these spikes are just kind of easy and goof-proof. How
many are you using?
They'll have a chart on the back. I think it's all based on the diameter of the trunk. So, and I think it's really easy. I think if it's like a 2-inch, you put 2. If it's 3-inch, you put 3. So it's kind of simple. So I think fall is a great time to have some established routines.
Like what?
If you have lawn tools, I think it's a great time to clean them and oil them as you store the stuff over the winter. If you have pruners or hedge trimmers, I like to spray them with a little WD-40 or any type of lubricant. Clean them off, spray. Hedge trimmers are interesting. I had, the electric hedge trimmers for years. One thing that I did was every time I used them, because that sap and stuff builds up, and I really ruined an old pair that I had. And so just by spraying a little WD-40 on it and just running it for just a few seconds every time I use it, really adds a lot of life to it. Most hedge trimmers you don't have to sharpen either, so you can use them for years, especially if you're just doing basic hedges. So I would always get in the habit of cleaning them, oiling them up, and just running it for a few seconds so that oil gets all over the blades. And then at the end of the season, for your lawnmower, if you haven't added a fuel stabilizer to it, I think it's very important that you put a fuel stabilizer in the tank that you're filling up with your gas, and then make sure that that's...
So the gas can?
So the gas can, and then make sure that you have that fuel stabilizer in the unit itself. We talked about this on, one of our other episodes. Fuel, it starts to break down and oxidize very quickly, 30 days to 60 days. Then it starts to varnish and get gummy. If you're not using some type of fuel stabilizer, the old strategy was always just run it dry, and you just can't get all the gas out.
That's what my grandpa did.
Right. So most manufacturers now, they're saying just use a fuel stabilizer in it all year, fill it all the way up, make sure you're running it so that the fuel stabilizer has gone through the system, and store it with a full tank, and that fuel stabilizer is going to keep that fuel from breaking down.
So my parents last year just bought a new snowblower.
Okay.
So my mom, I was actually just talking to her about this because she was planning on cleaning out the garage this weekend.
Okay.
And she said, I'm going to make your father go out and start the snowblower because I don't want any problems with it. And I'm like, it's not really I'm like, it's the gas that's the problem.
Right.
Because Dad always said, I mean, he had crazy ideas, but again, I love my father. But with the old snowblower, he thought that if he brought it inside to start it in the utility room,
Nice.
and it would warm up in there, and then he would be able to go blow the snow. But
Sure.
I'm like, Dad, it's all about the fuel stabilizer.
Right.
I've bought him that. I bought him Start Your Engines.
Yep, great product.
Right.
But I think that's smart to check it before you need it.
Right.
So you know whether because if you need to have it
Yeah, but I can
tuned up
guarantee you that never happened this weekend.
with your mom and your dad.
Yeah. She was mad because he didn't even help clean out the garage.
But it's but it's funny if you don't check it and now you
Right.
get a big snow.
Right, there's nothing worse.
Yeah, terrible. And everybody's at the hardware store or
Right.
the local mechanic trying to get their snowblower
Right,
tuned
right.
up because you need to make sure that your spark plug's not fouled. You need to make sure that your air filter's not fouled, and then is your fuel in good shape. So like you say, Start Your Engines is a wonderful product that we used at the store. In fact, our small engines guy, once he started using it, he loved it. So when he did his tune-ups, he would always add a little Start Your Engines to the fuel tank because it has the stabilizer in there, and then it boosts the octane. Great time in the fall. Change your spark plug, change your air filter on your snowblower, and then check it. Make sure the thing's working. And if you're running to the...
Do you think anybody does that?
They should. What a great routine to have, right?
Right, but I mean, it's like,
I bet people in Minnesota and Alaska, they probably have that routine down. But it's, I would say also get in the habit of, if you're taking your gas can to the gas station to get some gas, just add a fuel stabilizer then. If you always have the fuel stabilizer in there, you're going to have a lot less problems. And then for your lawnmower, now is just a great time to, if you want to sharpen your blade now, then you'll be ready for spring. But you should sharpen it at least once a year in cool weather areas, and then in warm area where you have warm weather grass, then you should be sharpening it twice a year. So every fall and every spring you should be sharpening your blade on your lawnmower.
What are your thoughts about an air conditioner cover for a central unit?
What's interesting is most manufacturers don't have a recommendation. I've looked at a bunch of the instruction manuals for AC.
Why?
I love reading the instructions for products.
Oh, you're so weird.
What's nice about a cover is it definitely keeps the coil cleaner, and if you have a yard with a lot of trees and they're dropping leaves, you're not going to have that debris, the leaves, the stems on top of your coils. And if you're in an area that freezes, you're not going to have water freezing on top of the coils. But the con is you're actually trapping a lot of moisture underneath that cover, and then provides a wonderful shelter for animals. So you got squirrels and everything else that are going to make a home out of this little shelter you've created.
That would be terrible.
And with some of the new units, you've got, delicate electronics in some of the new units. So most of the suggestions I've seen from heating guys is just lay a piece of plywood over the top of it, or a heavy piece of plastic over the top, and that way you're protecting it from debris, but you're not creating kind of a shelter or a place to trap moisture.
What about like a window air conditioner unit? Put a cover on that?
I would definitely put a cover on that because it's going to, slow any air movement into the house, so it's going to insulate your house a little better.
So let's talk about gutters.
Okay. Every fall, great time to clean them out, make sure that there's no leaves in the downspouts. There's a lot of tools on the market that can help you if you don't want to get on a ladder, especially if you have a one-level house. They have leaf blower attachments that goes up kind of like a periscope that goes up and over the gutter, the lip of it, and you can kind of blow especially if it's been dry and it's a dry day, it blows the leaves out very easily. A little tougher with the wet leaves. But there's a few different tools that you can extend up and over it. They have interlocking poles. I did a video on our Fix It Home Improvement channel. I did one of my worst videos, the audio. I had my son
So
recording
don't mention it.
Okay. Well, you can watch it. I should have it like the text below.
Yeah.
But I used this.
And apologize.
I had this Vertilock system. So these interlocking poles attached to a cordless drill, and then it has a couple attachments with paddles that you can put on the end of these poles, and you can buy many extensions. So you can do a first floor, a second story house. These paddles go into the gutter itself, and as you hit your drill, they spin, and so they're paddling out any leaves in there. Then there's also an attachment where there's a brush that you can pull down your gutters. They also have an attachment where now you can put your garden hose on the end of these tubes, and you can force water through it, so you can go right over the downspout and force water right down it, so you're blowing free anything in there. So something like that does a nice job. If you're in an area where you have snow and it freezes, you can get gutter dams if you have leaves that block the downspouts.
So what does that mean?
So you have water build up, it freezes. So, during the day when it's sunny, and usually it melts off everything in your gutters. If you've got leaves built up there, that all freezes. What happens is that ice will actually back up underneath the shingles.
Oh, really?
It can damage your shingles. It can pull the gutter away from the house. So you can do a lot of damage. So it's important that every year you're cleaning out these gutters so that everything can drain easily.
So every year my grandfather he had a 2-story house.
Okay.
He would put the ladder on top of the picnic table.
Okay.
And then climb up onto the first roof. And he would clean the gutters there. I mean, it was so terrifying. I mean, he was like 85 years old.
Really?
And still,
Daredevil.
Yeah. Oh, well, it was just crazy.
Did you guys film him?
No.
It might go viral on YouTube.
My mom would freak out. She'd just be like, be careful. I'm like screaming at him. Is it going to help?
Now, would he clamp like a piece of wood on to support the ladder?
No, it was
anything?
like, hey, girls, come here, hold the ladder. And I'm like, couldn't we get an extension ladder instead of putting the regular ladder on top of the picnic table? The picnic table that was older than I was. So, I'm like, brother.
Yeah, so
that was his strategy for cleaning out his gutters.
Got the job done.
I guess. You have anything else to add?
That's it for my fall tips.
Just your fall tips.
Our fall tips.
Okay, so I think that ends this episode then.
If you'd like to subscribe, you can If you'd like to subscribe, you can subscribe on iTunes or Stitcher Radio.
If you enjoyed it, please leave us a review.
You can check out our home improvement videos other than the Vertilock. You'll love everything we do. And that's on our YouTube channel, Fix It Home Improvement channel.
You can subscribe there as well.
You can email us at fixitpodcast@gmail.com.
Thank you for listening.
Talk to you next week.